Folks, welcome to a special edition of the Jake Feinberg Show. And as I continue my archival pursuit of my heroes in music, there are also the people that were the arrangers and the producers and the people that had the money to be able to bring in specific musicians in order to allow live music or studio music to prosper. My guest today did just that. He was in a band in his high school years with Nick DeCaro. And eventually he became an A&R man for some of the most offbeat but greatest record labels that this country has ever seen. I could go on, but I don't want to waste any time. Tommy LiPuma, welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Jake, thank you very much. I'm happy to be here and anxious to talk to you.
So, Tommy, my first question, could you describe, growing up in Cleveland, the kind of music, the diversity of the music you would hear on the AM dial, and the significance that music had on people's ears?
Well, I think just, first of all, to put it into perspective, the radio situation or the radio scene in the late 30s, early 40s, and of course on through the 40s and 50s, radio was a very important and integral part of, at least, in my family's life. And I had I had two brothers and two sisters. Two of them went off to the war, and so basically I had a teenage sister and a sister that was just about ready to graduate from high school, and there was always music on in the house. And of course, at that time, I'm talking about everyone from the Mills Brothers to that was probably one of the first songs that I was attracted to was Paper Doll by the Mills Brothers.
Sure.
But then I was growing up, with everyone from Joe Stafford, Harry James. This was basically what we heard and grew up with, Frankie Lane. And so I guess I was around 9 years old. I came down with this bone infection called osteomyelitis, and basically it had me bedridden for a few years. And as it turns out, the radio became my best friend, because that's it. I had this little box radio next to my bed, and fortuitously, I accidentally found the R&B station. I found the R&B station in Cleveland. It was WJMO,
right,
in Cleveland, and I started hearing all of this music that I had not heard before. Everyone from Big Maybell and Ruth Brown, and it was Nat Cole, Charles Brown, Louis Jordan. So it was like finding God. I just suddenly, as far as I was concerned,
it was a spiritual experience.
Yeah, it was. Absolutely.
Yeah, I believe you. I know what you're saying.
Of course, well, by the time I got to my teen years, I started, playing. I was a saxophone player. I had taken piano prior to me getting ill, and because I was always music was like oxygen to me, and I was never without it. And so by the time I hit my teen years, as it turns out, again, another fortunate situation was that Alan Freed was at a station called WJW, and he had a radio show called The Moondog Show, and he played all of the early R&B things. There was a record store in Cleveland called the Record Rendezvous, and a guy by the name of Leo Mintz, who owned it, who I ultimately ended up meeting when I got into the record business. When I first started packing records in the back room of a record distributor, and then I did sales for a very short period. I hated it. This was about my cup of tea before I got into promotion. But Leo Mintz basically sponsored Alan Freed and the Moondog Show, and that was it. Everything was a great. He was such a great disc jockey, and it brought such great music in that every night. It would start at 10 o'clock at night, and it would start with this wolf howling, and then he would play this song called "Blues for the Red Boy," and that was it. The minute you heard that, you knew you were in for the next 3-4 hours of just nothing but great music.
I wanted to frame it in a way. When you were growing up in Cleveland before the ringing of the cities, because from my understanding is that the government was somewhat petrified that we would fall into a recession following World War II, so they started the suburbia move, and Cleveland was one of those cities that had a vibrant urban scene. And how much validity do you put in the idea of having that vibrant urban scene, which doesn't exist today? How much that influenced the music?
Very much so. Tri-C College they just built a $40 million complex called the Center for Creative Arts. And as it turns out, they're honoring me they're naming the building after me, and it's going to be dedicated.
That is so righteous. Where is that? Is that in Cleveland?
That's in Cleveland.
You know what, Tom? How? I need to cover that. I need to get full coverage of that. That is one of the greatest. I don't want to get too sidetracked. That's beautiful news.
No, that's we could do that afterwards or whatever you'd like to do.
I'm really happy, Tommy. I know the love in your heart because I know the guys that you surrounded yourself with when you were a player and later as an arranger and producer. I just know the love that's inside of you, and what I'm trying to do at this point is to cultivate some of that to my generation. But you said something interesting. How can you? Is it without giving it? Why did it become unsafe for a white boy to go into the urban centers? Is it as easy to say hard drugs destroyed the African American communities? Why?
Well, they certainly didn't help.
But what I'm trying to say is,
Cleveland, like many Midwestern towns, had was varied in their ethnic. There was a huge ethnic community in Cleveland, like a lot of the Midwest cities. Meaning, you had an Italian section, you had a Jewish section, or let's say predominantly Italian, or in the case of no different than you had in New York. There was or is still a little Italy in Cleveland, and then you had a section. Actually, when I was I started. I was a musician, but I quit school in the 10th grade, and because I was behind, because of being out of school, being ill for a few years. I just, it got. School was never my.
Yeah, no, I think you and Pat Martino probably fall into the same boat in the sense that. But as
it turns out, fortunately, I met a disc jockey by the name of Bobby Dale, who was like basically my mentor in regard to. It was like basically going to the College of Life and Music with this guy, and I ended up getting a passion for reading and through this gentleman. But in any event, to get back to it's like I think that it's very important to put all of this into perspective as far as the neighborhoods are concerned. When I started, I was a barber. That's basically how I made my living. And then I worked 3 or 4 nights a week as a musician. But I worked in, my father had a barber shop on West 25th Street. That was a working class, blue-collar neighborhood. That was slowly, by the time I left and went on my own and opened a shop of my own, it was, there was an influx of Puerto Rican immigrants that came in that were settling in that area. And then I was working in an area, a steel. Cleveland was a huge town. There were like several big steel plants.
Right.
Public Steel, Bethlehem Steel, U.S. Steel, and this area that I worked at, which was Fleet Avenue, was predominantly Polish, and most of the people worked at the steel mills. So you had the diversity of ethnic neighborhoods, and there was there was always a bit of tension, and probably Cleveland was one of the first areas. Not the only area, but one of the first areas where you had what was called then white flight.
White flight, exactly.
Moved into the neighborhood. The next thing you know, within a year, everybody had their houses up for sale, and we're leaving. It was pretty sad. I don't think we're truthfully we've made progress, but not quick enough for me. I mean,
me too. And I've had the bass player Richard Davis on my program, and he twice, and he doesn't want to talk about music at all. He espouses that we could have the same civil rights movement all over again today. I mean, he believes that, and I have to be honest. You've made some really articulate points. One of them though that you said was there was some tension within the neighborhoods, but at the same time, everybody kind of felt like it was a fair playing field, and nobody was really nobody was like cheating anybody else, and nobody was getting ahead by anybody. You had to work hard and.
Oh yeah.
And hold on,
because absolutely. Listen, when I grew up, I grew up. It's called 123rd Kinsman, and then we moved when I was about 6 or 7 to 149th in Kinsman. But it was a mixed neighborhood. It was like predominantly Jewish and Italian, and then you had some African Americans who lived there. They were they're my friends' parents would be working in factories and whatnot, but they were a mixed neighborhood. And I'll tell you, the thing is, I so miss this sense of neighborhood. There was a store in the middle of a block, and everybody would congregate there, and because the store would be lit up, and the lot in front would have some lights and so forth, so you'd be able to congregate. And I don't think that kids today have that interaction. It's like my grandchildren get carted around in a car, and they get play dates. And play dates, we just would hang out. Next thing you know, my mother would stand on the porch and yell at the top of her lungs for me to come home.
Right. No, my two daughters, my older daughter especially, I love Tucson in the sense that there is a lot of diversity, but we've become a less trusting society, whereas I don't think my wife, like your mother, let you go out on the stoop and you guys would start up a beat and play baseball with different people, different walks of life, but there was more trust. There wasn't this idea that somehow my child might be hurt. The value of children has gone up, the love of children has gone up, but it's become very skewed, and we've become less trusting, and therefore you don't get exposed to other ethnic people, and so you begin to get into a bubble. That's essentially...
Well, that's true. The other thing is that even though I'm there's no question that I'm sure there were child molesters and people that were kidnapped children, then it was not anywhere as predominant as it is today. I mean, when I was 7 or 8 years old, my mother would just allow me to go to the movie theater, which was 5 or 6 blocks away, and we would just walk, to the theater. You won't find that today. It's just it's unheard of. You don't find a kid walking on the street alone. But listen, that's
no, and here's
another.
But this is what I love is this organ trio. The idea here is this: the urban centers because there were these steel mills, more union work, more tax dollars flowing into the city, the opportunity for more clubs, more accessibility, more people to be able to go and see live music.
Right. It wasn't necessarily, not that we didn't have clubs that would bring in, anyone from, let's say, I was a huge bebop fan by the time I reached 18, and, they had a club or two that would bring in Miles Davis or bring in Max Roach and Clifford Brown and so on. But, they just had, there were clubs with local musicians, and the Midwest has always been a huge there was a well of talent that came out of the Midwest.
Right.
And I'm talking about small towns, Canton, Ohio, Akron, Ohio, Sandusky. I mean, there were places that Dayton, Ohio. Art Tatum came out of Dayton or Cincinnati. I'm not sure which one. So.
Ralph Penland, the great drummer. Jimmy Madison was from Cincinnati.
Yeah.
A lot of cats.
Yep. So.
I think. But also from the African American circuit, I bet the Montgomery brothers came in there. I'm curious as to whether you met the when you were playing. Is that when you first crossed paths with Styx and Monk and Buddy and those guys?
No, actually, when you say Styx, are you talking about Hooper or
the Stick Man Hooper? Yeah.
Yeah. No, actually, it's very interesting. When I first got to California as a promotion man, and I was listening to the R&B station there, and as it turned out, the first time I ever heard the Crusaders was, this disc jockey, Herman Griffiths, played the Young Rabbits.
Yeah.
And, God, it's like, it was incredible.
What stood out for you? What did you hear?
This was 1960. Well, the year was probably around 62. And, next thing I know, I went down to buy a Crusaders record. That was my first awareness of the Crusaders, of the Jazz Crusaders, as they were known then. And then it wasn't until 70 or 71 when, maybe it was a little earlier, 69 or 70. When I went to Blue Thumb Records with my friend, became a partner at Blue Thumb Records, and we signed the Jazz Crusaders.
Bob Krasnow?
Actually, exactly. Yeah. Bob and I were friends from around 62 or 3. We were both promotion men. And,
Tommy, I have to ask you. I want to ask you because of your pedigree. When you heard the Young Rabbits, what did you specifically hear that turned you on your head? Was it the energy? Was it the transitions? Was it the horns? In your mind, what did you?
Well, I think it was like all of the above, except what you had. I didn't know it at the time. I didn't know it really until I started working with Joe Sample. That Joe was he was the main writer. He was. I'm not going to say he was the Crusaders, but without Joe's material, I think that they would have been hard-pressed to be anything but a good band.
He added so many colors. That's a very astute point, because he made him more well-rounded. So, anyway, you go ahead.
So basically, and I think also, I think Wilton kind of got into editing things and figuring out how to make things work and that kind of thing. But without Joe's input, I think it would have been impossible for them to have gotten where they got. Right to the point of, he wrote Street Life, and, a friend of mine by the name of Chuck Kay brought Will Jennings into the picture. He's the guy who wrote the lyrics. But, up until that time, in fact, it's really interesting that I realized that, the first, I'm going to let this ring. The first time that Joe, I think, got a sense that his songs had the ability to have lyrics put to them was when I used, not all, but a good portion of the Crusaders for the Michael Franks album.
Of course.
The Art of Tea.
Oh, I was listening to it. I was listening to that this morning.
Pardon?
I was listening to that album this morning with my daughter. Eggplant.
Yeah.
Eggplant is a great tune.
I do the Crusaders because of
Yeah.
the film and all of that. And when I went to Warner's and I started working with Michael, I signed Michael, and I thought, gee, this would be great. I'll bring Joe Wilden.
Yeah.
And then I brought Larry Carlton.
Yeah. John Guerin.
The difference was I used John. God, I can't believe it.
John Guerin.
John Guerin, thank you. I used John on John Guerin on drums, but it was Michael who had the idea. Michael Franks who had the idea to write lyrics to Chain Reaction.
Wow.
And,
wow.
I'll never forget the look on Joe's face when he first heard him singing these lyrics to a Chain Reaction, and I think it was like something clicked. And he suddenly realized he'd been writing all these, instrumentals all these years.
Right.
And suddenly, wait a minute, somebody can write lyrics to these things. And then, there was a few years where we sort of lost touch with each other. When we sold Blue Thumb, and I went to Warner Brothers, and then Bob followed me there.
No, Tommy, hold on. We're not going to gloss over Blue Thumb, dude. We're gonna pace ourselves on this because the idea here, man, is that you were on the cutting edge of the transition from acoustic to electric instrumentation. And in my judgment, in my research, I don't think that there was a band that was able to pull off true fusion better than the Crusaders. The Crusaders won, and the subsequent album are right on the razor's edge of, like, you got the Texas Gut Bucket, you got the California Cool, you got soul, you got and you got jazz, and it's a demonstration of maybe the most beautiful and under-recognized period of our musical history, and you were there. I mean,
well, see, here's the thing too. I was a big Horace Silver fan.
Mm-hmm.
I loved Horace Silver.
Sure.
And Horace was really, to me, one of the first guys to put funk into what was, modern jazz and, bebop. He put the funk in there. And, Room 608, and I mean, some of those pieces of silver, that was really the first, to me, when I started hearing this sort of change where instead of it just being straight bebop, there was the blues put in it.
You got funky blues, right? Funky blues.
But I think, and Horace's instrumentation was tenor trumpet. And so basically the only thing that changed in regard to the Crusaders was it was tenor trombone. And but there was definitely, Joe and I have spoken about this. I mean, Horace was a big influence in regard to just his writing, his just how they approached it instrumentation wise. But they reminded me somewhat of like some of the early things, except Joe's writing, had his own unique twist to it.
Even his writing, there were, what I love also about, although now I'm curious because were you, even though Franks redid the lyrics to Chain Reaction, was it your idea to say, Michael, I know these are the best cats to surround you, these rhythm cats, and the same thing you did?
Yeah. Oh, no. But though it wasn't like he was totally unaware of it, but he'd never thought about
it. Is, I'm telling you, it was the most genius moves in the history of music, and there, like you said, there were other cats too, totally under-recognized. But when you get to to the if you want to call it mainstream level, the idea that like you and DeCaro, am I pronouncing his last name correctly, by the way?
DeCaro.
DeCaro. Like with DeCaro's Italian Graffiti album, for some reason, I bought that album like 10 years ago. I didn't even know who he was. And now, no, I bought it 20 years ago. And now, I look at it and I say, look at who was playing on that album. You know, it says a big help to our special friends, Arthur Adams, Paul Humphrey, Wilton Felder, Chuck Rainey, you know, and I'm just like, what a ridiculously hip time, man.
Well, it was a great time. You know, all these cats were living in L.A. and I mean, please, it was a smorgasbord when it came to guys, you know, musicians to have on dates, and you know, Nick DeCaro and I. We met, you know, he was a Clevelander, and his brother, Frank DeCaro, I mean, basically, I got a call. I was about probably, I don't know, 18 or 19. I played in a band that had some notoriety in the city, and then the band broke up. Excuse me. And then I got a call from the DeCaros asking me to join their band, and it was basically a lounge band. You know, accordion, tenor, guitar, and then we'd have like a cocktail drum, you know, and I'd play on some things. You know, his brother Frank would play cocktail drums on some things, and you know, we just gigged. But there was no question to the fact that Nick stood out musically as a huge talent. And you know, we would, the band we had, we used to sing in you know, like the freshmen, like the four freshmen.
Right.
And Nick would arrange the parts. So you know, we did that for some years, and then we went on the road. This is like maybe just a few years prior to me getting into the record business. We went on the road for a while, and you know, it just, you know, we played just about every toilet. You know, from Fargo, North Dakota to Mishawaka, Indiana, and but you know, we were tight. And then what happened when I got into the record business? At that time, Nick went into the Army, and by the time he got out of the Army, I had moved to Los Angeles, and I was just going from promotion into music publishing, and I was doing demos on songs. You know, at the time I was representing Randy Newman and a girl by the name of Jackie DeShannon, and so I spoke to Nick, and I said, Nick, you know, I think you ought to come on here. I said, there's a lot going on here. I said, I'll give you a job making lead sheets out on all of these new songs that my writers are.
Oh, wow.
You know, that give you some pin money. You know, you could stay with me until you get yourself settled. And that's how Nick came out to L.A. And he came with his brother Frank. And then what happened when I was working at Liberty at the time, and there was a famous record producer at the time. He did G. McDaniels, Bobby V, and acts of that nature. But he was doing a Roy Orbison album, an instrumental album of Roy Orbison. And I convinced him to use Nick to arrange. And that was Nick's first, foray into arranging.
What was the name of that album?
I think it was called the Roy Orbison Songbook on Liberty.
That is unbelievable. Because I mean, that is such a cool thing, because it was all serendipity, because you guys turned into this producer-arranger team for so many albums. Yeah.
And then what happened was, of course, very soon afterwards, my two of my close friends, Jerry Moss and Herb Albert, had started this record company, and they asked me to come over as their first staff producer. This was October of '65, actually, and that's when I started. Actually, I didn't use Nick on on Guantanamera. That was the first hit I had with the Sandpipers. But I used Mort Garson. Now, Mort Garson was an arranger and a songwriter. He wrote Our Day Will Come, and I used Mort on that. But I started using Nick right around that time, and he did most of the arranging. And then actually, I even did an album with Nick on A&M. It was all instrumental. And then we had sort of a semi-hit that Andy Williams ended up covering.
I think, Tommy, I think this is the larger, big picture question here for my audience is, what makes a great team? Between you and DeCaro, because you know what, there's not a lot in business, in life, whether you're married, you're with a business partner, and forget the music industry now, but what made your team successful? What were the qualities?
Well, you always, one of the keys to an A&R man is, you have to know. It's almost like a director in a film. You have to know how to cast the right musicians, and you have to, sort of, I guess, intuitively have this sense to recognize a good song. It's all about the song. It's always been always about the song. You as my friend Bob Krasnow once pointed out to me. I guess I can't say anything. I guess you could bleep it out, right? You can't make horse shit out of. You can't make ice cream, out of.
And listen, Tommy. I want the Tommy in the raw. I mean, we can. I love your candor. I know what you're saying.
Well, you can't. Basically, the way it was said was, you can't turn horse shit into ice cream.
Right. It's if it's not there, it's not there.
So it's either you either got the material, right. or you recognize the material.
But hold on,
or you don't.
But you had to. But the genius is the idea of putting, as a director, casting players that you knew. I mean, obviously, some of these guys had a deep rapport, and that's what made it so good. You listen to the Michael Franks album. And, you got Joe Sample coloring things in, and you got Larry Carlton doing the wah-wah, and you got Johnny. Everybody's, it's about different roles, because if you bring in guys that are too similar, they butt heads, there might be some acrimony. So you had to figure out ways of piecing it together, and it helped. I guess the other question I have is that, was it strong? How imperative was it to have black unions? Were they very important in moving music forward? And when the unions
to have what? I'm sorry.
Like before the unions desegregated, when there was just black unions, was that strong for the music industry? And did the music industry get hurt when they desegregated it?
I don't think so. I think it's funny. I didn't. I was not that aware of black unions. In fact, by the time I got to L.A., excuse me, I think there was only one union, and this is like 60,
right,
1 or 2,
right.
And to tell you the truth, when I lived in Cleveland, I didn't know of I mean, at least in the musicians union, I don't remember there being a black union. I thought it was just there was just one union, and they all belonged to the same union.
So in reality, like, maybe better put, because there were more access and live. When you moved to Los Angeles, and there were all these clubs, the Baked Potato, and Larry Gale's Coffee House.
Well, Baked Potato didn't even exist. Well, Baked Potato didn't exist until I'd say the 70s.
My guy
who opened the Baked Potato was a very talented musician who a lot of sessions, and that's how I first met him. Don, oh God, I'm gonna blank on this.
It's okay.
Don Randy.
Yeah.
That was his name, and he started the Baked Potato. But that was really a great club to listen to music. It was a small club, but it was like it didn't matter where you were sitting, whether you were standing at the bar or sitting at a table, you heard it. It was just, it was a small bandstand, and maybe you were able to fit, oh my God, I don't think you could fit 100 people in there, maybe 60. So it was great. It was a great showcase.
And then that's what you identified are all the themes that my show, from a sociological perspective, has been going through. The idea access through multiple clubs, maybe not as intimate as the Baked Potato, but still intimate clubs, small venues, access from audience to band members, and lots of places for cross collaboration. So therefore, guys got to know each other by playing live. So when they got in the studios with you, you didn't have to do a lot of managing. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah, no. Listen, look, I'm not I'm a hands-on guy in regard to, first of all, going in. The most important thing is that when you go in, you're going in with the best material, that the material fits the individual that you're going in to record, and that you have the best musicians. And, at that point, you always have to just get out of the way,
Enjoy.
It's not that I don't, put my input, but I don't put my input, I do pre-production, I do a lot of pre-production, and I do that with whether it's the arranger I'm working with. I start my pre-production by just looking for the material, and then I work closely with the artist with that until we knock that list of material that we're going to go into the studio with down to whatever the about is, and then we talk over who we think we should have on the dates, and like right now I'm in the process of just starting this Leon Russell project.
Talk a little bit. You want to talk about that?
Sure.
Yeah.
And we're at this point right now where we're just picking the material. We've picked the musicians that we're going to go in with, and what we're going to do. I'm going to do some things with big band. I'm going to use, of course, the Clayton Havilland band for the big band things, and then I'm going to use a smaller group that Don Clayton will play bass on, and then Jeff Hamill will play drums on, and Anthony Wilson will play guitar, and that's just for the ballads, and then things that I'll put strings on afterwards. And then I'm doing a group of things where it's a little more edgier, but funky things, and I'm using Willie Weeks and Steve Jordan on that stuff.
I would love to hear some of it and maybe do some writing on those. That sounds really, really cool. I would love to hear it. I have to ask you. So there was an offshoot label called Janus, and Harvey Mandel was on that. And there's an album that has Tommy LiPuma's fingerprints all over it. Because of the selection of musicians, you had Howard Wales, you had Emil Richards, Big Black on conga, Michael Melvoin on piano, of course Paul Lagos on drums. And at the bottom it says, thanks to Dr. Tommy LiPuma for his 3 a.m. care packages.
Oh, God.
And I say to myself, I don't think he was delivering hoagies.
I'm not truthfully, I can assure you, it wasn't hard drugs.
It's all, no, believe me. I know what you're saying, man.
But look, I don't think it was. I think I was also I started drinking. I loved wine. I still love wine.
Sure.
Wine is, and I think who you're talking about is who at that time was my very close friend Abe Kesh.
Exactly.
Who was also known as Vaco.
That's right.
And Abe and I were like, tight. We were really very close friends.
He was a DJ, right? He was a DJ in San Francisco.
Abe Kesh, Bobby Dale, the gentleman I mentioned earlier, the disc jockey.
Yes.
And I were, the Three Musketeers. We were like inseparable, and we were all absolute music nuts.
Right.
And we would just get together and just listen. And the thing about both these guys I'm talking about Bobby Dale and Abe Cash. Their musical knowledge was so deep. You know, I was a complete music freak, and I knew a lot about pop, jazz, you know, of course, bebop, all this stuff. But you know, what I learned from these guys is something that, you know, you could spend 8 years at Berkeley. You're just not going to get, okay? And that's because it didn't matter. I mean, you know, Abe was the first guy to turn me on to Otis Redding, and this was in 64, 63, 64, whatever, Otis's first album. He was the guy that first introduced me to Funkadelic, played me the first Funkadelic record. That was on Westbound. But at the same time, you know, and I'm talking Bobby Dale, you know, but I'll never forget the first time I heard, well, I mean, of course I knew of James Brown, but Bobby Dale had the all-night show at Carol A in L.A., and he had a key to my house, so, you know, and he'd get off at 6 in the morning and head out, you know, head to the house. My place was the Hang. I mean, because I just bought, 1966, I bought my first home. Little place in North Hollywood. Studio City, actually. So he had a key to the house. He'd come in, and one morning, you know, he just woke me up, you know, stuffed a pipe in my mouth. And the next thing you know, I'm in my den listening to Sex Machine, you know?
Right.
Well, we must have listened to that cut from 7:30 in the morning until 9:30 in the morning. Just over and over and over again, because it was just, you know, it was just one of those outrageous cuts, you know, you never want to hear.
Exactly.
But then at the same time, the next thing he would put on would be, Holtz, The Planets. You know, The Planets by Holtz, I should say. Right. And, you know, Ravel, and it was just, you know.
No,
opera.
but here's the thing, Tommy. I mean,
Maria Callas. It was the first time I ever heard Maria Callas in Turnadell was through these guys, and so I mean, I don't care how many years you spend in music school, you're not gonna you know, get that kind of education.
No.
Any place except by pure chance of meeting characters of this nature. But
I do find you are one of many people I've come across on this journey from the music world that you were able to. What you were saying before about school. The curriculum, as Pat Martino says, is not stimulating. So therefore, you're not a school guy. But yet, you grew up in a time. You grew up in a time when you could be worldly smart, passionate, and love, and then still make a living. And now, unless you have an education, because a lot of creative arts have been cut off, that doesn't exist anymore. So it was one of those sort of non-elitist education movements. So it didn't come across as snobbish. It came across as actually very appealing. And you were right in that pocket of guys who were not stimulated by rigidity, who wanted to get outside the box, and there was money available, and there was an appreciation and a consciousness there for you to actually have a career.
Yeah.
I do want to say this. I mean, Wayne Henderson said to me, he goes, you know, Jake, I told him, he goes, Jake, you are one of us. He's like, your spirit supersedes who you are as a person. So when you talk about vocal, for instance, you guys did that Sounds of San Francisco on Blue Thumb. And very craftily, he's sitting on his couch with a big set of headphones. I mean, I can relate to exactly what he's doing. And he's got two of my favorite albums in view of the camera, which was very savvy. One of them was Crusaders, one on Blue Thumb. And then there was Bernard Purdie on Prestige. I forget the name. It's super bad. I forget. They do a great James Brown cover. And I'm sitting there and I'm saying, boy, there was a real flavor for diversity within music, and people's minds, the industry was just so markedly different, and it seemed just a lot more wholesome and looser. And I think the question I have for you is, the musicians that you worked with were superstars, but they didn't carry themselves like superstars.
Oh no,
they were very humble. Why? Can you describe the values of those musicians, the Paul Humphreys, the Wilton Felders, the Joe Samples, the Wayne Hendersons, what were they? They were brilliant, but yet they didn't carry themselves that way.
Yeah, well, they were. They all came out of the club scene, and like a lot of, well, in the case of the Crusaders, these were all Texas blues guys, man, and they grew up on Duke and Peacock Records and Bobby Bland and Fathead Newman, and I mean that's this was like take for instance Fathead. Now I knew Fathead from all of the Ray Charles records, and obviously, man, I thought the guy was great and I loved him, but I had no idea the depth of Fathead's talent till I did several albums with Dr. John, but Mac Ravenack, Mac was very close with Fathead, and when I was doing the Standards album, the first Standards album, In a Sentimental Mood, when I was doing that album with Mac, we had done this song called Candy, and I was trying to figure out who was I going to use to do the tenor solo, because I wanted it to be old style. I wanted it to be like Ben Webster and that kind of feeling.
Exactly.
And so I was thinking about there were a few guys, Plas Johnson could play like that and all of that, and Mac said, well, hey man, let's use Fathead. And I said, well, yeah, Fathead. Now Fathead, I had only heard him play on the Ray Charles things, and of course it was outrageous, but it never occurred to me. Well, we got Fathead. I went with Mac's take on that. Well, this guy, man, plays the most gorgeous. I don't know if you've ever heard or the last time you heard the solos that he played on that record, but they're brilliant. And 1 minute he sounds like Lester Young, the next minute he sounds like Ben Woods. I mean, that because that was his background. That's what he came out of.
Right.
He came out of Ben Webster and Coleman Hawkins and these guys. See, this is the other thing that really, I get very frustrated about is that, like, if I can use this as an analogy, painters, Picasso, Braque, Matisse, the early modernists, the early modernist painters, they before they started painting, in their styles, Cubism and Fauvism and so whatever these isms that they put on these things, before they painted in this radical style, different than what had come before them, Impressionism and so forth, they painted like the old masters.
Right.
They knew the old masters. And I don't mean just. I'm not talking about Da Vinci. I mean, they knew all of the great Italian Renaissance painters. They knew how to paint in that style before they went and did something radically new. It's very difficult today, with the exception of I don't want to generalize, but it's very difficult today when you talk to young people and you mention, people like Jay McShann. I mean, you say Jay McShann, they don't know what you're talking about. They think you're talking about some Irish, whatever.
Right.
They don't know who Jay McShann is. Man, Jay McShann was outrageously great. Just great. I just found this thing I knew Jay McShann, but I just found this beautiful song called "Once Upon a Time" that I'm going to do with Leon. But the point is that, like, because you had this, all these players, all these people, they had history in their going for them. They knew all the great players. I think it's that there's a space here in today's learning and today's, I don't know where the cutoff is. But all I know is that there are a lot of African American kids I speak to. They hardly know who Otis Redding is.
Yeah, no, I stop. Occasionally I'll stop young African American kids. I'll be driving along. I'll pull up on the side of the road. They probably think I'm insane. And I go over to them. I say, Tell me some of your friends where are they jamming, where are they getting together, and they'll just say, nobody plays instruments anymore. And
no.
And
well, that's part of the government's fault too.
Right? No, but I think what you're speaking about is, okay, everyone talks about the digital age and things are so fast, and you feel that if you're behind the curve, if you don't speed up, therefore it's okay to skip over parts before you master.
Well, that's a good point. I think you've got a point there. I never really thought about that, but I think you're right. But to get back to the what used to happen when I grew up, I went to junior high, and I wanted to, all I had to do was pick an instrument. What do you want to play? Well, I think I'll try. Let's try saxophone.
Right.
Played a little piano, but in the band, what band? What else am I going to play in the band? Well, I think I'll try the saxophone. Well, they had a saxophone there for me. They don't have that anymore. It's like you have to donate. You have to find donators to donate money or instruments to students today.
Yeah.
It's tragic. It's really, just the curriculum within the schools and the monies and the priorities, have gone. Again, I don't want to generalize because I think there are some schools who still know and feel the importance of having the arts as part of your daily curriculum.
Tommy, I will tell you this, that there's a Freudian element to our society now in the sense that we're broke. Our country's totally destroyed financially, and it's not because of the creative arts, it's because of wars and destruction and greed. Yet, in a Freudian sense, as a collective whole, the people in power, the people that really have a lot of money, and the government also has decided to not be able to look itself in the mirror and hammer the creative arts down and punish them for something that we did that never got. They didn't put this country in that mess, and so
right.
Now it's like we're going to actually. It's the classic. We know there's an elephant in the room, but we're just going to keep looking the other way, and it could take us right off the cliff. I mean,
Well, listen. The other thing you've got going here now is that and I saw it coming. To be quite frank with you, I didn't know it was going to get to where it got, but I saw it coming. The minute you started having radio stations go into what the format period, where suddenly you had a radio station that did nothing but play one kind of music. First of all, I think it's very difficult to fill 24 hours worth of music without having mediocrity somewhere or other enter the picture, because there isn't that much qualitatively. There isn't enough music to fit one genre and fill 24 hours of music.
Yeah, that's right.
The same things over and over and over
that's
again.
Right.
Where it used to be you'd listen to a radio station. Well, for the most part, I mean, they had easy listening in a sense. Radio stations that where the adult the people would listen to Perry Como and things of that nature. But what I'm talking about is like whether it was top 40 or just or the early FM stations where nobody had any restrictions as to what they could play or what they had to play. They played whatever they damn well pleased like playing, and it was the taste of the disc jockey.
Right.
Who basically brought this out, Whereas today, you've got some guy sitting somewhere, with this non-entity picking the music, and this is it. You're going to play your and this stuff. I think Bill Drake, quite frankly, even though I knew Bill, I think Bill had something to do with it. It got down to let's play the hits. Let's play the hits. Then next thing you know, you had one of the terms that I detest, which is smooth jazz.
Yeah, well, no, we don't. Don't say that. Don't say that word. Don't say it.
A lot of crap is what it means, because and that happened because what started happening, and I saw this firsthand. When there was a minute when these stations became, they meant something, and then you had a couple of people there that would say, well, I'll play this, except I don't think I want the, I don't. If this didn't have backgrounds, I think I'd play it. Or if this didn't have a solo, I'd play it. Next thing you know, it was like the tail wagging the dog. You started having, these. I mean, it became so convoluted that this music became unlistenable. And the thing that's amazing is, someone once said to me when I was, complaining about all this, they said, "Well, hey man, you were the guy who, you were the guy who basically started this." I said, "Man, look, if I ever had any idea that I would have started this, I would have never done it to begin with."
Dude, I just wrote down. I'm writing notes here, and I'm like, Tommy LiPuma standing up for unsung heroes. Think about it. I look at you as the brains behind being able to say, okay, I'm going to highlight guys who have not gotten their just due and get them on albums and put really, really good studio musicians who have also been not given their just due. I'm thinking specifically, you did 2 albums with Paul Humphrey as a leader, and you had this group of guys, the Funky Thumbs, with Arthur Adams, obviously, Chuck Rainey. Some of these guys rose to significance, but Paul Humphrey, you gave an opportunity to.
Right.
So many guys that even like, the one song I can play on my conga drum is Jamaican Moon, with DeCaro. Those are things that are essential on radio, essential, because it allows for ordinary people to hear stuff that they don't even know if they like it or not. What is a hit? A hit is just something that's, marketed and boxed up, and to me, it speaks to the fact, you go back to the time when you and DeCaro doing the accordion and the barbershop you were singing, it was okay to be an individualist, have your own identity, and now you have to belong to something, or you have to be boxed into something, and to show true creative expression is you're an outcast because you don't fit into something. It's just like formatted radio.
Yep.
A lot of, for my audience, a lot of people will say, okay, well, you're talking a big game, but what kind of music does Tommy LiPuma stand for? I pulled something out of the vaults. I wanted you to take a listen, okay? The heavy scuffles on, huh?
Now I'm trying to remember whether or not that was Howie or who was that?
That was the band Full Moon.
Oh my God!
You know, and that was an album that.
Oh yeah, no, that's yeah, that's Buzzy and Neil and.
Phil Wilson,
Oh my
Phil
God, yeah.
Phil Wilson, you know.
That was done on Warner's. What happened was I did an album with Neil Larson on Horizon called Jungle Fever.
I don't know that one.
Oh my God!
Oh, I got to get that immediately.
You definitely should get it. It's called Jungle Fever, and it was just a wonderful album.
I'll get it immediately.
And Buzzy was on it, you know, and Neil, and that's actually how Full Moon got started. I mean, it was like we started with it was the Larson Pete band. That was when I went back to Warner's. It became the Larson Pete band. But I did this album with Neil Larson, and Buzzy was his friend, and he brought Buzzy into that. So if you're going to hear Buzz Feedon, first time you're going to hear Buzz Feedon is on the Jungle Fever album.
I mean, what role did you? I mean, that tune. I could go down the street and you wake people up with that music. You know. I mean,
now the interesting thing is when that album came out.
Yeah.
It was a stiff.
Of course, because to me, it's people have not been exposed to it enough. Of course, I also believe. Like the 3 a.m. care packages, we're too uptight about soft drugs in our society as well. I mean, I'll be very blunt about that. I think that this is mind-expanding music, and that's why I think the decriminalization of marijuana is essential, because there's too many uptight people.
Well, yeah, and also, it's like it makes you not only opens your mind, but I mean, it's a question of like just being able to lay back for a minute and enjoy, and not. Look at it as as a chore, or I think in today's world, I think what has happened is versus the way it was with us. We used to sit around in the den, in my den in Studio City, and smoke a J and listen to music.
Right.
We would listen to music. It was like that was it. That was our pastime.
That's why you're my hero, man. You're my. That's awesome.
Today, it's like it acts as background music. Like you're on a computer doing whatever you're doing, and you have music on in the background.
Right. No, I had something in my head that I wanted to say. I mean. The truth is, Tommy, to put it in perspective, that kind of music is not just mind-expanding. When I hear a song like The Heavy Scuffles On, like yourself, I could sit there and listen to it a few times. I take that energy and that power and that love and I put it into my daughters. I put it into my work. I am a more productive person because of that emotional surge, because of that music, because there's real energy. It's not just some lifeless crap that you're putting on as background. I'm in the public media station, Arizona Public Media, the TV unit. We're trying to pitch we are pitching a proposal to do a thing on Poncho Sanchez as a conguero and a whole thing. And the minute the woman puts it on, she's great. She's very talented, but she's putting it at like the lowest level, as if it would just be on in my home. I said, you got to turn this up. It's about music. You got to hear the music. You can't just put it at a low decibel level because that's what it's going to be going on. That's the thing. Creature comforts, more technology. People don't go out as much, and they listen to things at lower volumes. When in fact, this music needs to be played way up.
Oh yeah, exactly. It's got to be on 11.
Absolutely, and I just wanted to say it's really, I think you're the first A&R producer from my favorite time period that I've gotten a chance to talk to, and you get a totally different perspective, and because you're a fanatic like me, and it's and you had the freedom to be able to do what I still believe can be done and want to do. So it's just, thanks so much.
My pleasure, Jake. Talk to you. I'm looking forward to talking to you again.
Me too.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
in the Majestic.